Through the course of time, some demonstrations have brought about legislative change. People power, whether behind the drive to stop war, climate change or poll tax, can make a difference. But the right to protest isn't a given, and there are a growing number of laws which can be used to resist it. The Serious Organised Crime and Police Act, later amended under the Terrorism Act 2006, makes it an offence for a person to enter a protected Scottish site. Some defence establishments, royal palaces, government buildings. The government says that's to combat against serious organised crime and terrorism. The anti-Trident protesters at Faz Lane say that's a ban on their right to protest. At just 21, Jamie is one of the youngest residents at the Faz Lane Peace Camp near Helensburgh. He says he's fuelled by other people's apathy. The camp's been around longer than he has. He's only ever known protest, whilst much of this new legislation has been in place.
I mean, the fact that we can't stand outside our own Parliament in Westminster and have a protest unless we have the Metropolitan Police's permission is absolutely outrageous. This is supposed to be the home of democracy, Britain, and we can't even stand outside our Parliament and say our piece, which I think is disgusting and shameful. And a lot of the terrorism laws, I mean, I've been searched and held and charged under so many different terrorist laws. If people were to look at my sheet, they'd think I was a member of the Taliban or Al-Qaeda, when in reality I sit in a caravan by the A114 protesting against nuclear weapons.
It seems there are now so many things that are forbidden. Take the smoking ban, the ban on alcohol in public places, attempts to ban some sales of buckfast, the hunting ban, dispersal orders banning people from certain areas, a ban on marbles or conkers at school, a ban on flowers in hospitals, a ban by some councils displaying hanging baskets for fear they'll fall. Wearing a crucifix, that was banned, and hoodies too, and mobiles on certain train carriages. The list is seemingly endless.
We go through an education system and told this is a sensible amount to drink, you're able to do it legally at 18, and then government now wants to be prescriptive to everybody about how much they will drink, when they will drink. We're getting to a stage where we're being advised what to eat and when we will eat and what percentages of everything. Government should not be there to do that. It's down to an individual to decide when they'll go out on their Christmas night out, how much they'll drink, what they'll eat, what they'll do for birthdays and all these occasions.
Since devolution, Scotland would be right to draw breath. There have been a great number of new restrictions, many, like the smoking ban, attempting to tackle health issues. But some believe governments are all too quick to ban something simply to be seen to be acting. For this MSP, though, banning individuals from an area of Glasgow through dispersal orders did solve an antisocial problem.
We carried out a comprehensive study through Strathclyde Police in connection with this crime statistics, but also what was an important aspect of that was to gauge local opinion. Local residents were gauged for their opinion on how effective they thought a dispersal order was, and they were, responses were very positive. People felt that it gave them that freedom for the majority in their community to enjoy their local community.
Rival protesters clash at this Bloody Sunday parade in Glasgow last weekend. The police were said to have considered banning it for fear of planned disorder, but the City Council allowed it to go ahead. But then again, the police themselves only days earlier marched through London in a dispute over pay, exercising their right to peaceful protest. But to some, freedom of expression is under increasing threat.
At the moment we're living in a society where it's possible for you to be sent to prison for a long period of time for writing poetry or for storing things on your computer or for finding out about what's happening in Iraq or in Palestine. Now that's about infringements of freedom of thought, not just freedom of expression. That's a really serious impact on the ability of people to express themselves and to take political action.
Those manning the peace camp say they'll be around as long as Trident is, and they'll keep the home fires burning to help preserve what they say is the right to public protest, deeply rooted in any democratic society.
Earlier this evening, Alan Grant, writer of the comic strip Judge Dredd, delivered one of the Edinburgh lecture series at the Royal College of Surgeons. He talked about the difficulty he faces writing the comic strip, since many of the storylines originally conceived as jokes have now become reality. Just after finishing the lecture, he came into our Edinburgh studio and I asked him what he meant by saying that the real world had become uncannily like the fictional one he created in Judge Dredd.
Well, many of the things which we created for Judge Dredd in the early 1980s have since come to pass. For instance, in Mega City 1, Judge Dredd City, we had the judges banning smacking, which has since come to pass under the Scottish Government. We had them banning smoking, which has since come to pass throughout the whole of Europe. We had them banning refined white sugar, which hasn't actually happened yet, but I'm sure that it will, particularly in the fight against obesity. We had them banning coffee, because coffee is also an addictive drug, or at least the caffeine part of it is. And many of the things that we created back then have actually come to pass.
You were less extreme, weren't you? Because you gave the smokers a smokatorium, and I guess that would be classed as a public building.
We did give them a smokatorium, yes. You have to remember that at that time there were 800 million people living in Mega City 1, and there was only one smokatorium where those who were addicted to nicotine could get their fix. However, it is fairer than what has been done in Europe now by various governments who have driven smokers outside, and now they're trying to demonise them further by prohibiting them from smoking in the open air.
Now, to be fair to the real world, there is an element of circularity in this, isn't there? Because you did some of your research by just reading the tabloid newspapers and extrapolating the trends.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that we created these things, we extrapolated trends into the future. And even in the 1980s, there were quite a lot of voices speaking out against cigarettes and the public consumption of cigarettes. However, I'm not a smoker myself, but it seems to me that no death certificate in the entire world has ever had smoking cigarettes as cause of death, and even fewer have had passive smoking as cause of death. If smoking really does kill people, why don't they put that on the death certificate?
Well, do you think all these bans are a bad thing?
With the exception of the smacking ban, which I'm not sure about, I think that banning things in general is quite counterproductive in many instances. If you take an example from history, Prohibition in America, where they tried to ban the sale of alcohol, America went alcohol crazy during that time. I think that Prohibition lasted for 4 or 5 years, and then it was quickly repealed. And the reason for that is that if people want to do something, there really isn't anything that governments can do to stop them. They can do it up to a point, but say that somebody wanted to smoke in the street and the government said no, how would you stop them? Put them in jail? That seems a very, very draconian measure to take for somebody having a cigarette.
All right, you're sitting there, the world is caught up with your fantasy world, you've still got to write the cartoons.
Mm-hmm.
What's your projection for the next round?
What do we do next? Well, I imagine that the next thing that will be banned will be free speech. After that, the ability to travel will be severely curtailed.
This on the grounds of cutting global warming?
Yeah, that's the excuse that they will use for it. And at the same time, taxes will be massively increased, supposedly to mitigate the effects of global warming, where there is absolutely no scientific evidence that global warming is man-made. Right,
but go on, be a bit more imaginative than that. What are you going to put in Judge Dredd from now on?
Well, see, it doesn't really matter. Well, we've already banned comics, for instance, in Mega City 1, and the reason for that is that comics are one of the most subversive forms of literature that you can get. Nobody wants to ban television, because television doesn't make you think, it just entertains you. Nobody wants to ban books, because you read books in a logical, linear fashion. Comics force you to use both sides of your brain at once, which is why they were banned in repressive societies like the USSR.
Last point, you don't really think contemporary Britain is a fascist country, do you?
Yes, I do.
We'll leave it there.
A fascist country, by definition, is a country where the individual means nothing and the state means everything. Individuals in this country have very few rights. Okay. The state is stripping them of these rights even as we speak.
All right, we'll have to leave it there, Luke. Alan Grant, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Well, on that bombshell, we'll have a look at tomorrow's papers, starting